On March 11th, 2011, at 2:46 p.m. Japan Standard Time, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck some 70 kilometers off the eastern coast of Japan's Tohoku region. This earthquake, the strongest in Japan's recorded history, was felt as far away as Kyushu, Japan's most southern main island, located some 1,000 kilometers away from the earthquake's epicenter. But the earthquake wouldn't be the end of the disaster, as tsunami waves up to 40 meters at points slammed into the Japanese coast, inundating some 500 square kilometers of land and leading to the deaths of nearly 20,000 people. But as the world's eyes turned towards Tohoku, a crisis of a different kind was occurring roughly 100 kilometers to the south of the earthquake's epicenter. At the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant, located in the coastal town of Okuma, a loss of cooling led to 3 separate core meltdowns and explosions of hydrogen gas, which released massive amounts of radiation into the atmosphere. The residents of local towns like Okuma, Namie, and Tomioka only had mere hours to react, throwing their lives into bags as the areas around the plant quickly turned into increasingly larger evacuation zones. By April 21st of 2011, roughly 6 weeks after the earthquake, a 20-kilometer exclusion zone around the plant was established, forbidding entry to unauthorized personnel. In total, over 160,000 residents of nearby towns were evacuated, their former hometowns left to rot. But as they say, time heals all wounds. In the years that followed, massive cleanup efforts began to take place. In 2013, residents of some of the nearby towns could return for short periods of time. By 2017, some evacuation orders were lifted, allowing residents to move back in full-time. And in 2020, the town's rail line reopened for the first time in nearly a decade. Personally speaking, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster has always interested me. The meltdowns, the evacuation zones, the towns left to rot. It feels like, in a way, a moth being drawn to a flame. I can't explain why, but I always wanted to visit. So when I was given the opportunity to move to Japan, the former Fukushima Exclusion Zone was a place I knew I had to go to. So I did. And I learned firsthand how these areas cheated death and began to recover once again. This is the story of Fukushima, 15 years later. Our plan was this. We'd be taking the train down from Sendai in Miyagi Prefecture to the town of Namie, where we'd explore the former bustling town. We'd then continue south, stopping in the town of Okuma, the town closest to the nuclear plant, and finally ending in Tomioka on the southern end of the exclusion zone and home to the TEPCO Decommissioning Archive Center, a museum about the disaster. Overall, we'd be spending about 7 hours in the former exclusion zone, a small amount of time, but hopefully long enough to try and grasp the impact the disaster had on the area. We left Sendai just before 9, arriving in Namie at just after 10. Arriving in Namie was somewhat of a surreal experience for me. As of March 2026, I'd only lived in Japan for a little over a year and a half. And in that time, with very few exceptions, I've never left heavily populated areas. So coming to a town that is today more or less abandoned was surreal. While the population was over 20,000 prior to the disaster, as of 2020, the population of Namie was estimated to be around 1,900. That's roughly as many people as can fit on a packed Yamanote Line train in Tokyo. Let's quickly talk about Namie Station, because this is a primarily train-related channel after all. In 2010, the last year before the triple disaster, Namie Station served roughly 737 people a day. Today, that number is much lower, although I've been unable to find passenger numbers for the station in the current year. The last time there was reliable data was 2018, just after some permanent residents returned. In that year, Namie Station was used by just 24 passengers a day. There's one island platform and one side platform, and a footbridge connecting the two. Inside the station, there's a small waiting room, and an even smaller room dedicated to information about the local area, as well as every single Pokemon from Gens 1 through 3. The station is unmanned, with only a tap point for IC cards on hand. Outside the station, there's a small bus rotary and a taxi stand. We made our way east towards the remnants of Namie's downtown. You can tell that the town used to be much more full of life. Intermixed with the few businesses operating, you can find overgrown plots of land belonging to families and entrepreneurs who never returned. An interesting spot is today what is this construction site. 15 years prior, this site was home to the town's elementary school. If you go on Google Maps, the interior of the building is visible. You can wander around and see what the school was like on the day of the earthquake and the tsunami. The rooms are full of school bags, and the day's lessons are still written on the chalkboards. When the children of Namie arrived at the school that day, they didn't know it would be the final time they'd be taking classes in their hometown. Another interesting spot is this street roughly half a kilometer northeast of Namie Station. This is Shin-Machidori, Newtown Street, the former downtown of Namie. On April 12th of 2011, this infamous photograph was taken of downtown Namie, showing the abandoned town as it was left. Today, many of the buildings have been torn down, empty lots in their place. While some businesses have returned, it certainly feels much more empty than what the town once was. Being on the northern edge of the exclusion zone, Namie is a town that today is much more full of life. There's an active fire station, an Aeon Mall, and this place, Michieki Namie, or Road Station Namie, a rest stop that serves the Joban Expressway located some 5 kilometers to the east. This rest stop was opened in 2020 and contains everything you'd expect from a rest stop: a food court, a gift shop, and several specialty stores like the sake brewery. There's even a Pokemon-themed playground behind the park for kids and Ben to play around in. As we were visiting right before New Year's, one of the biggest travel periods in Japan, the rest stop was teeming with people, which, honestly, is great to see. If many of the businesses that normally propped up Namie's economy went out of business due to the disaster, a way for tourists to support the economy, even for 30 minutes on their drive between Sendai and Tokyo, can still help the region a lot. It goes to show that even in a situation as bad as Namie's, people can still find a way to recover. After finishing up at Michieki Namie, we headed back towards Namie Station to catch the next train south. This isn't like Tokyo, where trains come every 10 minutes. If we missed this one, the next train south wouldn't be for some time. We got back on the Joban line, passing through the town of Futaba, before arriving at Ono Station in the town of Okuma. Okuma is the town closest to the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Plant. From the town's only train station, Ono Station, the power plant is a mere 3.5 kilometers to the west. That's a distance comparable to the distance between Shibuya and Shinjuku. Once a town over 10,000, the real population of Okuma sits between 5 and 600 as of 2023. Being so close to the nuclear plant, a large part of the town remains uninhabitable, with the majority of the inhabitable area surrounding Ono Station. We didn't have long to spend in Okuma, but the time spent here was perhaps the most impactful part of the trip. First, Ono Station. There's only one platform at Ono, serving both north and southbound trains. Prior to the nuclear disaster, Ono Station served an average of 616 people a day. The original station building was heavily renovated following the Fukushima nuclear disaster. The station in its current form opened in 2020, when the Joban line resumed service here. Up by the ticket gate, you'll notice a large display showing the amount of radiation present in the area measured in microsieverts per hour. If you don't know much about radiation, 0.179 microsieverts per hour is roughly equivalent to going through an X-ray scanner at the airport. Finally, in the waiting area, there's a kiosk where you can learn information about radiation and the current status of the town. As the levels of radiation in Okuma were higher than in other areas, we could only explore a small area around the station. Being this close to the nuclear plant, fewer people have decided to return home to Okuma. As such, you're more likely to find more abandoned buildings, like this former hair salon located just 300 meters southwest of the station. On the east side, we found this abandoned home, which had been left in the same state of disrepair since 2011, although seeing the amount of damage, it's likely been broken into several times. Directly to the station's west is Okuma's attempt to attract travelers, the Kuma Sun Terrace. Opened in 2025, this is another rest stop similar to the Michieki Namie. There's lots of outdoor space, several restaurants, which were unfortunately closed the day we visited, space for events in the northern building, and even a full-fledged family mart. Being brand new, and much closer to the nuclear plant, there were far fewer people visiting the Kuma Sun Terrace, and as much of the land in Okuma is still unfit for habitation, many people haven't returned to Okuma. But that's not to say there aren't people living here. As we were exploring, we were approached by Shohei-san, a man from Kanagawa who moved to Okuma in the past few years. He helps run a cultural exchange program for students in the region, and he was willing to give a message on camera.
I'm Shohei, not Otani, but Shohei Okino. I'm in Okuma town now. Okuma town had a nuclear power plant accident, but so you can see the renovation of this town. Very beautiful, right?
Yes, very beautiful.
And actually, radiation. The level of radiation is safe now, so you can
come.
You can come here. See you again. Thank you so much.
A huge thanks to Shohei-san for his message. I think with more people like him, Okuma and the other towns surrounding the plant can make a comeback, although it will be difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. The Kuma Sun Plaza is a good first step, but until radiation levels decrease even more, and more is done to make the town more livable, we likely won't see this town return to what it once was. Unfortunately, our time in Okuma was once again limited by the train schedule. So while there was likely more to see, we returned to Ono Station and headed towards our last stop, the town of Tomioka, on the southern edge of the exclusion zone. Tomioka Station is located just some 400 meters from the coast of Fukushima. When the Great East Japan earthquake occurred, this area was hit hard by the subsequent tsunami, with the station completely swept away. The station was reopened in 2017, and was the furthest north the Joban line ran until the complete section of the line was reopened in 2020. The station has one side and one island platform connected by a footbridge. In the year prior to the disaster, Tomioka was used by 474 people. In 2018, the year following the station's reopening, the number was reduced to 225. Tomioka felt the most alive of any of the areas that we'd visited. Of course, being the area furthest away from the nuclear plant helps, but you can still see the scars of the triple disaster in the area. For example, this empty lot just to the south of the town's mall used to be one of the town's elementary schools. Furthermore, interspersed between the new modern housing developments, you can still find overgrown lots where homes used to be. Unfortunately for us, the New Year's holiday meant that the TEPCO Decommissioning Archive Center was closed, which is a shame, as I'd been looking forward to visiting the museum. But if you decide to travel to Fukushima yourself, go ahead and check it out. To me, Tomioka is a very interesting place. If I didn't know the history of the town and how it was affected by the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster, I'd assume it was just a normal Japanese small town, one that's been affected by people moving to nearby cities like Iwaki, which could explain the empty lots. But being here and seeing a lived-in town gives me hope that the other areas in the former exclusion zone can return to a semi-normal state once again if given the chance. They just have to be given that chance to do so. As we leave Tomioka, it's time to reflect on what we saw today. We saw 3 towns in 3 different states. One with a long way to go towards recovery, one trying its best to recover, and one slowly making its way back towards normalcy. Obviously, we didn't spend nearly enough time here to fully understand the situations of the towns and the people who live there. But I implore you to visit Fukushima for yourself and look beyond the nuclear disaster to see an area returning back from the brink bit by bit. I'd always wanted to visit the former Fukushima Exclusion Zone, and I'm incredibly happy that I did.
What do you think's being grown in those fields over there?
Meth.
Okay, yeah, cool, sure.